I was wondering about with form and value, when form becomes contaminated by value, the process, if there was any way to either reverse or to explode that process, and it sounds like you're saying there is, because it's this spiral that continues, but I was wondering about sort of the mechanics of how that can happen, how it can move from one to another.
From form to value.
From once a form is contaminated by value, how it can sort of spin out, and from that, if there's any way to and not recover in a going back, but in a spinning forward.
Our form can récupérer ressusciter.
Yes, and
beyond the value.
Oui, mais c'est une progrès, c'est pas progrès, mais c'est une help me Nicolas, please. C'est une transformation positive, c'est une récupération, mais pas à la forme originelle, mais c'est un nouveau changement positif.
Ouais. This relation between form and value is very, very complicated. I like to say value as a degradation in a sense of form, but not degradation. It's not an entropic form of form. It's something else. Let's take the language. The language is a materiality of signifier and so on. The literality, and as a literality is language a form. And this form is indestructible, but it's always contaminated, recuperated, and operationalized through sense, signification, communication, so on. Language becomes a medium to communication. But language of communication, but language in itself remains a form in its literality, in its radicality, as in the poetic language, for example. Not always, it can be very bad, but if it's namely ideally in the poem where the language succeeds in exhausting itself in its literality, when there is no rest, no residue of language, all becomes form, and with the pleasure relied to form and so on, the poetic pleasure and so on. In this sense, form and value remain very exclusive from one to another. How functions this contamination, this mediation through sense, signification, and so on, and how can language recover? Maybe it will less and less recover, and maybe all symbolic language will disappear in the languages of numeration, communication, in the synthetic languages of now and so on. Maybe it's a possibility that the symbolic language disappear. That would be, of course, catastrophic, but on the other side, I hope that it's in an indestructible form. That's the same maybe for art in general. In general, we can experiment our art, but there is no definition, no ideal definition of art now, neither. But our art degrades? No.
Yes,
Degrades.
or disintegrates. I don't know.
No,
Dis-
degrades. It's a degradation. It's not only in commercial value, of course, in the art market and so on. That's we have to do with that. We know that. That's obvious. But more profoundly, it degrades in aesthetic value. That's very different from art form. You can interpret it as you will, as you like. But we are in a stage of aesthetization of all. All becomes aesthetic, but is no more art. Because yes, art is inexchangeable as a form. It's object of an impossible exchange. In this measure, in this way, is a singularity. I speak from art for as soon as art becomes exchangeable, comparable, form is incomparable. As soon as it becomes comparable with valuation of this art, superior or inferior, and so on, and the aesthetization of this sphere, then it is no more the same question. We are in art integrate the whole universe of generalized exchange, as well as merchandise, as well as merchandise, as well as any merchandise at all, financial or commercial or economical. And it enters the sphere of consumption and so on. We know all that. But what we consider less consider is this degradation even in the aesthetic, the degradation of art in aesthetic, in the measure of there is contamination between art and real life, banal life, and so on, commercial, existential life. And art was another thing, was a singularity out of that, beyond of that. He created another scene exclusive of the real scene, and beyond the reality, another, whatever. So as soon as art and existence collapse contaminates each other, and art with becomes a retour image, back
reverse
image of the banality itself of the world as it is, then the world becomes aestheticized, and art becomes realized and banalized. And there is then a continuum between divide where art as form is irreparable. That is the process, and for art is really a fatal process. I mean, for contemporary art, I will not say that art as an ensemble in this process, in this catastrophe. But that is the perspective. Yeah, it is the anthropic perspective, maybe, of art. But it's so obnoxious for reality itself as for art.